Welcome to episode 476 of Salcedo Paranormal. And tonight I'm sharing true paranormal stories on the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page. And that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live streams on Discord or if you listen on the podcast or YouTube feeds or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP, digital broadcasting. And there you can hear replays of 2 episodes of my show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. As always, I want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, as well as Liam Martin, host of the Exile Minds podcast, for producing the shows and putting them up on the station. If you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others and rate and review the podcast, the show on your podcast platform of choice. Also, I've written some paranormal fiction and nonfiction books you can find online on Amazon. And if you'd like to receive extra episodes of the show, at least one a month, you can sign up for the Patreon for this show. And there are 4 different membership tiers, but you get the extra show every month, no matter what level you sign up on. Also, if you'd just like to make a one-time donation, you can do that through PayPal and or Venmo. And help is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making the show. And anything that you, any way that you're able to help will make the show better over time. So, and of course, those expenses include equipment and research materials, and then also travel expenses. I'll be going to the Mid-Michigan Paracon this year, November 4th and 5th. That's a Saturday and Sunday. It's a weekend. And I'll be there making recordings of myself and anyone else who wants to join me to talk about the paranormal and experiences and anything within those 2 topics. So, and then I will share those recordings on the show once I get back home. So I think that covers just about everything, so I can get on to the stories here. And let's see. This first one says, one night, after some friends and I had been out dancing and drinking, one friend came back to stay overnight in my place. I gave them the guest room. It was furnished in French country style and antiques. Even though the light flickered a few times while I'd been in that room, I always felt safe there. But my friend came out to the living room not long after going in, apparently disoriented. My friend claimed that 2 children were in the guest room, and they didn't want her there. So she decided to sleep on the couch instead. What was odd is that she didn't believe in ghosts. I don't know what happened or how to explain this experience. And that's where that story ends. It's really amazing. I wonder if the friend was more sensitive, or if than they ever let on, or if these apparitions or entities, whatever they were, just really decided they needed to make themselves known that in that one case, and it was a stranger to them. Maybe they were used to the person the writer that lived there, but then when someone new came in, they didn't like that and sort of made that known. Hard to say, but does sound like, I mean, of course, lights flickering. Sometimes that can happen through just electrical issues. But if you take this into just go with the paranormal, that can also, in some cases, indicate different energies moving through a place, and or sometimes I would think even conscious entities or spirits or souls or whatever's there. That can be them trying to sort of give a sign that they're there. And so if you take the initial experiences of the lights flickering, and then combine that with the experience of this friend, now I'm wondering, did they see these children or did they just hear them? Of course, there's not a lot of details there, but I'd be curious about any details that, of course, the friend didn't share in that case, or at least the writer didn't share. And and of course, I wonder what else happened in that room after that fact, or even before that maybe even happened to the previous owners of the place or renters or whatever the case may be. If that room has a history of experiences or not. And to me, that's always a question. And whether it's the answer is no, there's never been any other experiences there, or yes, there have been many. Either answer is amazing in a way because it just makes you wonder why then, in either case. So, I wonder maybe if, even though these two, the writer and their friend, they were friends, I'm wondering how close of a friend they were, how well the writer knew that friend. I would guess if you're letting them stay in your home, then you must trust them. But I'm also wondering if it's someone maybe that you just didn't think about it and you just let them stay just because they seemed okay at the party or whatever. What if there was something about them that maybe the kids, if they were kids, didn't like, that maybe the friend was able to keep hidden from the writer, but maybe not from these kids or these other, basically these other entities. That's always a possibility, I think. And in some cases, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a good or evil thing. It can just be a personality difference. People can just have problems getting along in some cases, and it's not even I don't think it always has to be a good versus evil thing. It's just different kinds of people all around. So maybe for those kids, that person just really didn't work. So all kinds of possibilities there as always. So moving on to the next story. Let's see here. This one says, recently I purchased a vintage clown doll from a garage sale. I kept the doll in the basement closet over the years. I moved the doll multiple times and moved to a new home as well. Once I settled in, I put the doll on a miniature rocking chair and then on the couch while I was doing some cleaning and reorganizing. One day, my two roommates and I went out for ice cream. When we returned, the doll was no longer on the sofa. At first, I wondered if my roommates had played a prank on me, but we had been together since I had last seen the doll. I looked everywhere for the doll, which was large enough to make it difficult to hide, but I never found it, and my roommates swore they had nothing to do with its disappearance. And that's where that story ends. I'm wondering, of course, whenever it comes to dolls or any objects, but especially dolls, it seems they can really be sort of centers of paranormal activity. And then if you think of how clowns are sort of a divisive, basically people either like them or they don't, in a lot of cases. I'm wondering how old that doll was, if there could have been some energy attached to it. maybe some energy or consciousness that was attached to it didn't want to be there anymore, and somehow managed to teleport the thing out of there. I think that is rare, but not impossible. You hear about people who have objects that vanish and reappear from homes all the time, in the paranormal anyway. My favorite story about that is the one from a while back that I shared with this family where the writer, their dad was walking in the kitchen of their house, which had this really weird spot in the kitchen that it just felt weird. And this one day, the father dropped his phone, and when they all looked at the floor, even though they heard the sound of it hitting the floor, the phone wasn't there. And then years later, the writer and their brother, I believe it was, they happened to be in the house and they heard the sound of something hitting the floor. And they went back to that kitchen, and there was the phone that had fallen out of their father's hands or pocket or whatever, and then disappeared. So it's like this phone in this one case just went through some kind of a, who knows, time, some kind of a portal through time that brought it forward into the future somehow. I wonder how much time passed. I'm getting into another story here. But the point is, objects in the paranormal, in unexplained situations, have been known to disappear. So now it is, I think, the one possibility I have to maybe consider with this clown story. It would be odd, though. I would think if someone came into the house to get this, to take anything, to steal things, it'd be really, really odd for them to just take the doll and nothing else, and for there not to be any signs of a break-in that I'm guessing that the writer would have noticed and mentioned. So I don't know with that one. That's an amazing story. And of course, where did the doll go? Now, is it going to be a case where it popped up later on, or it does pop up later on, somewhere in our future, to where the writer will find it and then not even think about basically making any other posts online about how it just appeared one day? I think that's always possible. But yeah, neat story there. So moving on to the next one. This one says, I have had many experiences with ghosts. As a fan of paranormal things, I often find myself in situations involving spirits. The one I want to talk about here happened when I was around 4 or 5 years old. I was at my stepdad's apartment with my mom and 2 stepsisters. While playing on the computer, I heard a thump coming from the closet. The closet was behind me, separated by a wall. When I looked, I saw a Halloween decoration scarecrow leaning out of the closet doors, facing me. I screamed and called for my parents, who were on the balcony. I believe it was a ghost or spirit, especially because the apartment had frequent paranormal activity, like opening drawers, slamming doors, and footsteps at night. I often think about this encounter and wonder if it was a genuine paranormal experience. So that's the end of that one. Now, I'm guessing they don't remember what happened, or if the thing was still there, or if it was gone once they came back. If they say they were 4 or 5 and this was how many ever years ago. I'm just curious though. Were the closet doors in the same position when they came back as they had been, with this thing sticking out of it? Was it an actual decoration, but they were still getting a sense of a presence? somehow from it, or I do think in some cases, um, different entities can sort of uh, make things appear to be different than they really are. So I'm wondering if there was something, if it was some kind of a decoration, was it being manipulated so that, or was the person there, was the writer there somehow, their perception being altered so that it looked more frightening than it really was? Um, does sound like they lived in an active location, so it's hard to know. But that does sound like a lot of, other than just the footsteps, there's a lot of objects being manipulated there. From that closet, the closet door to the just doors in general, and then I'm guessing cabinet drawers, things that you have to if you're going to move it a lot, you have to have some force behind to ability to move it. So unless there's a wind, which I always kind of figure in these stories, people, if they're writing them, then they're probably going to try to rule that out. Um, so at least I always hope so. But yeah, so I don't know what they experienced there. Um, it's really odd that there was a couple of stories tonight in a row like that with involving objects that are made to look like people in a way, or at least humanoid, um, that have paranormal activity surrounding them or involving them. And it's really amazing that there's a couple of stories that about famous dolls, of course, that are said to be sort of have all kinds of paranormal activity surrounding them. We've covered them in the show before. A good friend of the show, Jen, and I covered two of those, Robert the doll, and then, of course, the Annabelle story. But so, and if you go off of those, and I know I've heard before that a lot of people think that there's nothing really to the original story of Annabelle, and yet the museum where it's, and we talked about this in that one show, the museum where it's held is said to have activity surrounding it. So um, I don't doubt that that is possible, and I'm sure there are all kinds of things out there, objects out there that either contain or are manipulated by other forces to make it look like they're somehow alive in a way. So really amazing phenomenon there in terms of the how and the why and all those things. So so yeah, that's all I have on that one. But just funny how those two stories came up back to back. Moving on to the next story here. This one says, once I find my spot, I lost it. There you go. I found it now. Had to scroll down. Okay, this one says, recently, my sister and I were discussing the various paranormal experiences we have had throughout our lives. We are both in our early 20s as of now. I told my sister about a memory I had of seeing a Native American man by my window when I shared a room with my sister in our old apartment. Surprisingly, my sister confirmed that she also saw the same figure. My sister and I often experienced paranormal events together, which makes us feel less crazy. Despite the sightings, we believe the experiences were not negative. It felt, okay, there we go. It felt more like someone was watching over us. We both feel a spiritual connection with with the world, sorry, based on this and other spiritual experiences. Our father used to say that he was of Native American heritage, which I had previously doubted, but now I wonder if it's connected to the Native American man my sister and I both saw. I want to ask my father about it, although he tended to exaggerate stories for entertainment, so I am not sure what he would say. So that's the end of that story. Does sound like those two siblings have a connection to each other and then possibly to the paranormal. And so, yeah, I have no doubt they could have seen that. I'm wondering, I know that the sister said that she saw the same thing as the writer. I'm wondering if that was at the same moment, on the same night, or multiple nights. In that case, I don't know, but there are plenty of stories out there of people seeing these apparitions of people from other times. And of course, you never know for sure if it's a spirit or if it's some kind of a time anomaly, depending on the positioning of the apartment. I'm guessing, though, I mean, unless the apartment was on the ground floor, then maybe there would be a way for that to happen still. But yeah, those kind of appearances are always amazing to me. These figures from the history of an area. And then when there's multiple witnesses as well, that's always amazing as well. I haven't had that so far in a single experience, but I've had that with, of course, multiple experiences where some family members and I saw the same thing, just at different times. And so that's that. But still, it's an amazing thing anyway, just because we could sort of verify with each other that maybe we did see something and there was something going on. That's, of course, my what used to be my grandparents' house. And since we only have a couple minutes left here, I think, even though I've shared the story before, I'll just summarize it here again, since there's not a lot of time for another story. So my grandparents moved into this house in the town where I live now, and I believe it was the 60s. I'm not sure, though, totally. But it was many years ago, before I was born. And of course they had their children, which was, of course, my dad and his siblings. But not long after they moved in, or at some point after they moved in, my grandma one day saw a woman standing at the stove, or in front of the stove, in the kitchen. My grandma had walked away from the kitchen for a minute to do something else and came back, and there was a woman standing there in a blue dress with a white apron. And then apparently she just vanished. So at some point after that, my dad was going up the stairs to the second floor. There's a couple of landings on the stairs that they kind of double back on each other to go into the upstairs hallway. And he saw this woman standing on the first landing of the stairs, same clothes and everything, sweeping the landing. And then she just vanished. Years later, my cousin and I happened to be walking past that stairwell, and we saw that same woman on that landing. Although she was transparent to us, but we could still see her, and I could still see her, which is amazing. And of course, what I found out after is that my grandma, many years ago, went to the neighbor's house to visit. They were friends, and the neighbor had stepped away for a minute, and my grandma saw a picture in the house of this woman. And the neighbor came back and said, "Oh yeah, that was my mother-in-law. That was the husband of that family's mother, who was the original owner of the house that became my grandparents' house." So, just a quick refresher on that story there. So, thank you all for listening, and that's all I have time for tonight. And I will talk to you all on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.